for people to get here.
Paula. Paula?
Hello, Russ.
Hi. I just want to tell Paula it's not morning, it's night.
It
In
depends,
California.
doesn't it? Morning somewhere, I can vouch for that.
It's morning. It's 5 o'clock too. I just had a whiskey somewhere.
Cole, I see that you added Naomi's one pager. Do you know if she's going to be joining us today?
She emailed me back saying that she was planning to. She had speculated that she doesn't really need to give a presentation, but she more of like a guided conversation.
That's fine, but I'm going to move it after Maya. Okay. Well, the initial flood has abated, so maybe we'll warm up here. Cole has given us a link to the document, to the agenda document. Our current plan is to go through these topics in this order. Peter, I'm going to add, but first we'll do a little bit of bookkeeping, which will include a fresh suggestion from Peter. The bookkeeping, I guess I'll wait on the new candidates in case they show up a little bit late, although I see that Lenelio is here. And before he introduces himself, we'll introduce him. And before we do that, we'll give him a chance to get used to who we are and how we operate. A reminder that there are backgrounds on our new candidates, including Lenelio, in the agenda document, including links and notes from our, I don't know what you want to call them, initial interviews. I'm going to mention, just so you can be thinking about it, that Peter Vandergaag has suggested that 410 distinct email threads is a bit much for anyone's mailbox. And while he's probably aware that he can adjust his notification settings, he has a more a richer suggestion for separating information sharing from mailing lists. But I don't want to discuss that yet because I know that Judith and Annika and Christine have a topic and they need to go first because someone, I think it's Judith, needs to move on. So I think that's where we can begin. Does that make sense, Judith and Annika? Is there anyone critical that you need to have here?
That's fine, but I do see new people, so,
That's right.
I
We
don't
can give
know.
we can give it a few more minutes.
okay. One question, has anyone heard from Anastasia? Just how she's doing and,
Yeah, it's a good question. I have not. I see that Michal is connected with us.
Hello,
Hello,
good
Michal.
morning, good afternoon for all of you. Yeah, and
It's nice
what
to
I
have you
think
here.
is
It's nice to have you here, Michal. We're
nice to meet you again, and I will be listen about in progress and new contact of people, and I'm trying just now to thinking about this Australia and in Ukraine too, and it's the same trouble. It's war conflict and water war conflict in Australia. It's crazy. From day to day, from year to year, it is growing everything to dangerous situation for us.
For all of us.
McCall is in Košice, which is about 60 miles from the Ukrainian border.
Yeah, it is 90 kilometers or 60 miles from Ukrainian borders, and we are trying to help for. I have some volunteers on the boundary for to help for refugees, and we are trying to share information by social media and to because it's in Slovakia is a lot of trouble with growing of extreme guys, which is a lot of invest money from Putin regime to Slovakia to develop this Russian open air for people, and it is not easy. But it's a lot of manipulation here, and but just now it's society. It's strongly oriented to help for Ukraine, and daily it is coming a lot of thousands and thousands refugees to Slovakia and to distribute to families and to different level, and people just now is deeply understand about the reality, about who is who, and it's about conflict. And tomorrow morning I listen of a speech of President of Biden, and I was quite satisfied with a lot of very strong messages for to helping for democracy and freedom in Europe. But when I returned couple years ago in 2000, no, it's 1999, when I was on the San Francisco about this Goldman Prize, and this time was the same conflict in Kosovo, maybe you remember, and a lot of journalists gave question to me, what I am thinking about Kosovo, and I say, it is a very sad story. It is a lot of trouble. I don't know how to solve this problem just now, but I deeply understand that this democracy process in communistic regime after Velvet Revolution in Central Europe, it is necessary to build capacity of civic society and civic democracy process. And a democratic country around the globe forgot and starting to make partnership with mafians, the same like Putin, and it's create with this good business and without a real change of democracy. Because if you are looking over Ukraine, I was after Velvet Revolution in 1991 about building of bridge, Carpathian Bridge for a sustainable development in Ukrainian side. And I was completely on the shock how people was completely washing of thinking, and we forgot for that. And when you remember about 2014, when was huge conflict about democracy in Ukraine, I wrote again with my my experience from 1999, and I say, listen, guys, you are forgot for that, and if you are trying to help for democracy, we need to develop from democracy from bottom to up, like Biden today say about this building of capacity and not democracy economy in US. And a lot of linking in European Union was create on the old paradigm of society and regime, and create this a great possibility to mafians to corrupt and so on. And after that, with its civic society was pressed to corner, and just now is the result. But we have second chance to start to develop with freedom and democracy, and the same like about reality, about knowledge is about climate change. I know about how much misunderstanding, and with misunderstanding about this, for example, about democracy and climate change, about this growing about extreme event like in Australia, it is the results about this misunderstanding of diagnosis. What is problem? Where is the problem? What is the reason about this growing? And if we don't understand this, we have after that big trouble. And because we have good ideas to help for that, but we very often don't understand what is some best effective solution. And best effective solution, it is possible to create only on if you are deeply understand about this diagnosis and reality on the bottom grassroots level of possibility of society, of community, and so on. And I know that a lot of trouble around the globe, but about this people of society, global society is growing, nature resources is lost, and we need to find a solution which will be natural resources will be grow again. Not only population is growing, because without restore of nature resources, it's not possible to give chance and sustainability for growing of population. Yeah, it is not
Well, thanks.
easy, but it is a reality. And but maybe around our group can to be develop some model which can to be bring not only with climate change solution, but economies, social security, environmental security, and cultural development, because everything is on our heart. Yeah.
Here. Thank you very much, Mikhail. Mikhail, if you have thoughts about what we as individuals, or even what we collectively can do to support this effort and the sentiments you've talked about, I'd suggest you post them into the mailing group. I've been thinking about it a lot, and obviously if it was obvious what to do about this situation, we would do it. But I think we all need to be looking for how we can help.
Yeah, it's one idea. And a couple years, 10 years ago, when we trying to help for Carpathian Mountains region in Ukraine, because it's a lot of trouble. It is very long distance from Kiev. It is on the boundary region in Slovakia, and the idea was to bring the restoration program for Carpathian region in Ukraine, and with creation a lot of jobs, because this is extremely important to starting to develop some model which local people can to participate and to be active on the and build local economy. And we have this concept on the Ukrainian language, and we are published with one book, Water Without Borders, and in Ukrainian languages is Voda bez kordonів. And we bring to Carpathian partners, listen, this is your chance to develop, but it is not easy, because everywhere, like in Slovakia, in US too, in Afghanistan, in Africa, it is a lot of strong people, huge businessmen, waiting for chance to invest big projects, not small projects. This is a conflict between bigger solution, one central solution, a lot of small solutions, and this is about this. It's on the philosophical level. And we need to bring this concept in different parts around the globe. And I sent to Dwayne yesterday email about this. Ukraine is its name is UA, and Australia is a AO, which means it's create this like bridge between UA and AO. And to create this model to bring recovery of whole system and to help for people. And Dwayne said that, oh, it is a big problem to communicate with official authority in Australia, but it is challenge for society. It is challenge for us how we are stronger thinking to make change. And if we are only trying to this and this, like we have no chance. We need to be more stronger, to be active, and special concrete solutions on local level.
How's this for a transition? So, Mikhail, I think we're all thinking about the difference between these big project solutions and central organizations versus how to promote grassroots activities. And we're going through, this is the segue part, we're going through a similar discussion about ourselves, is whether the Alliance wants to take on big projects or whether the Alliance wants to find some way of simply providing a forum like this for lots of individual projects. We had a meeting last week in which we started by sort of presuming that we knew who we were and what we wanted to do when we began to talk about questions of branding and communications. And that didn't work. It was informative, it was useful, but we realized that we don't yet have a clear vision of who we are or how we proceed. And thankfully, Annika and Judith and Christina and Ananda have been sort of meeting in the background, trying to help us collectively work through that process. And since I know Judith needs to leave sometime soon, I want to give the floor to them for our first discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so as John said, we kind of bumped up against this awareness that we haven't fully inhabited what it is that we are going to do, how we as a group are going to serve both our members and the efforts of eco-restoration in general. And just listening to Mikhail right now, this is an example of the wisdom that we have in this room, in this group, the global reach, the deep experience. So we wanted to, rather than, like, okay, let's kind of close it down and narrow it, find a process that allows us to hear what can be offered from all our members and those that are joining us literally daily. And so both Christina and I have been taking part in it's called the Community Consensus Institute. And that is a way of bringing everyone's voice into the room, and we have the opportunity to work with the people who are training us. And so we are going to explore that, not impose that, but kind of get some insights about how we might move forward. So I'll let Christina and Annika elaborate.
I'll just speak briefly to the consensus model. in many ways, the consensus model is very similar to eco-restoration in that it restores healthy and sustainable relationships within a group or an organization. And it does that by beginning with respectful listening to the members and what their wisdom, strategies, their hopes for best outcomes can be. And you can think of it as a participatory democracy rather than a representational type of form of governance when just a couple people from the top kind of extract what they want from the rest of the organization. The consensus model equalizes the relationships within the organization, and everyone contributes to what is a collective statement for the organization. And as Judy mentioned, we're just now exploring this. So the purpose of it in the end, though, is to best serve everyone in this group and even people who can't attend the meetings. So, for example, there are organizations of farmers and the farmers can't attend because they're out there doing the eco-restoration. And so we're hoping that we can bring those voices in as well through interviewing and other processes. Anika, would you like to add anything?
I'll just summarize with saying a couple of things. There are two distinct kind of areas we want to kind of, there are two gaps that have arisen. One is that we don't want to speak on behalf of the voices who are not here and make assumptions around what they probably say, right? So how can we fairly represent the group that we claim to be in service of, which is the on-land restorers? There's a broad member base and very few of them are coming to these meetings. So that's kind of one challenge that we want to make sure is correctly addressed. A lot of the tensions of last time from within me was coming from the fact that we were speaking on behalf of somebody else. That's one avenue. The other piece is once we do have people participating within a forum, let's say a forum like this, what are all of the learnings we have about how to manage those group conversations to make them feel comfortable, safe, and accepted, heard, so that all of the true voices are coming up, not reactionary voices, and because we have to have difficult conversations. That is what will move us forward, but we need to feel like it is okay to have those conversations. So these are the two avenues and the specific kind of challenges that we're after to solve. A couple of updates. For the consensus model, we are meeting with the experts, thanks to Christina and Judy's kind of connections to them. We have like 2 hours with them tomorrow to meet. I just want to, there is, if people are particularly passionate around governance, this is not a closed group, right? This is a working group. If there is an interest of like listening in, we may not be able to facilitate kind of the active participation yet at this stage as we're moving into the process. But I just wanted to say that it is happening at Eastern time, 6 p.m. Thursday. We're meeting with the consensus model group. We are also kind of planning on putting a weekly meeting where we meet around facilitation and governance topics in a smaller group just to hone in on the solutions around this. Again, if there's particular interest, expertise, or passion in this, you can reach out and we can make sure to kind of include you and your expertise into those specific conversations. Lastly, a couple of people who aren't here. Max who's from Egypt, Sikkim. He is going to, he has offered to also present on techniques around holacracy. We would like, he will be coming into the mix very soon as well. And Ananda, who's actively kind of also helping us work through this from her experience of collective action.
And I just want to add to this, that the reason that, you know, I sort of opened up this consensus approach because I learned about it and have a chapter about watching an absolute transformation in a community using this model. So I learned a lot from it. But what I really want to say is that I don't think we yet have truly grappled with what the potential of this group is. We are here because we know how important restoring ecosystems is, how transformative environmentally, economically, socially, politically it is, and really to start to embrace the possibilities. I think that a process where we really do listen to each other's aspirations and experiences and wisdom will really help us, you know, be more than the sum of our parts.
That's all we had for updates. Any questions, follow-ups? If you want to join the governance circles, just ping us in the chat.
Thank you for taking the lead on this, ladies. I really appreciate it. I do want to add that Peter van der Gog from Ecosystem Restoration Camps has not been with us for a while, but in a weak moment during his last visit, he mentioned that he also had some thoughts and some experience about governance. So he's a resource we can tap into also.
At 6 p.m. Eastern time seems a bit of a challenge for me living in Amsterdam.
Well, I think one of the nice things about this process is that we're not forcing it. I think it's an opportunity for exploration and emergence. And yet, as I prepare to change the topic, we don't have to spend all of our time soul searching. We get to see what emerges. So that's all I got to say. Any other questions or comments on this topic before we move on?
And
Okay. Adam, yes. I can take a hint.
So that was a hint, huh? I look forward to this process. I applaud the inclusiveness part, but I just want to point out that we have gotten to this point, and in my estimation, we've done a fantastic job working together. I think there are a lot of issues to be resolved. There always are in groups, and I look forward to this one. But let's not forget the accomplishments and the collaborative work that we've already done, which form a strong foundation for moving ahead.
I and my dog agree with that.
It's your dog's agreement that I really value, John.
There we go. Okay. Any other? Michael, Michal.
And we just now in process to trying to discuss to establish like not like branch concept, but principle the same concept about era on the minimum of the Slovakian territory on Central European, like Czech, Hungary, Polish side, maybe Ukraine, with to involve people from businesses, maybe some local politicians, and to build capacity, because in this process which we develop around global alliance, it is necessary to bring different ideas for solution and to make like exchange experience, like from American side, from Central Europe, maybe from Africa, from another Australia space, and to make this processing and to build the capacity which solution can be some more effective, and exchange of experience can to very useful for all our partners, because whole idea is I think it's not good to be more concentrate, but like Biden today say about this is to building processing from bottom up and create this different approach, different way for solution, because in this moment I know that it's a restoration or recovery of the climate is on the pioneering solutions, and it's we have a lot of theoretical knowledge, some poor level of practices, and not practices about this restoration, like forest restoration, agriculture restoration, urban restoration, but we need to develop capacity about partnership cooperation. How can to create this model about this a multi-cross-sectoral cooperation between public, between society, between politicians, businesses, experts group, and so on. And it is a big challenge for our alliance. But and my idea, I'm discussed with colleagues that we can to trying with create a small group which will be make some principle which we harvest in experience from last 30 years, and I think it is time is just now open for that, and to bring for economical level, because I am sure that this program is not environmental or only climate, but economical program for that.
Thank you. That's very exciting to hear, Mikhail. I hope you'll keep us posted about that parallel development. And I'm happy to be reminded that this very process of trying to figure out what we're doing may be a contribution in itself. I'm going to move on. Yep, hello.
Just say hello. I just wanted to respond quickly to Adam's comments, and we are in this consensus model. We are definitely honoring the foundation and the collaboration that has happened so far. And I think that our hope is that through the consensus model that we can build off of that into the future with the best outcomes from what has already been done.
Thank you. It occurs to me that this might be a good moment to introduce some returning and new ERA candidates, so that we can remind ourselves that we continue to bring in new and interesting people. And Peter, I guess I want to give you an opportunity. You've been here before, but you've already been mentioned. So why don't you just remind us who you are, where you are, and at least put on the table what your perspective is on why we're here. But all of that in 2 minutes.
Okay, Pieter van der Graag. I am currently director of ecosystem restoration camps, actually the foundation set up to support ecosystem restoration camps. Ecosystem restoration camps is not an organization, it's a movement of 50 autonomous, independent, locally started projects, most of them quite small. And by coming together, we learn from each other. We help each other find routes to finance to do the work. And we form a community. So in that sense, 50 very practical on the ground projects that are trying to restore ecosystems. And it's founded based on an idea by John Liu, who was the chair of our advisory council in 2016. We're now 5 years old, and there's about 50 projects that have come together, and 2 per month are joining, which is more than we expected. And it's all over the world, which gives us the 6 p.m. Eastern time. It gives us all kinds of time zone problems too. So I understand that it happens. Next to ecosystem restoration camps, I am in the Netherlands involved in 2 other sustainability initiatives. One focuses on improving labor conditions in the natural stone sector. I chair this initiative between the Dutch and Flemish governments, trade unions, NGOs, and the natural stone sector. And currently, we are talking to expand to Italy and Germany, but it's very much focused on social aspects. And finally, in a similar light, I chair an initiative between 3 Dutch ministries. Again, about 8 NGOs in this case, the trade unions and the Dutch pension fund sector. Almost all the pension funds are involved, bringing together almost 2 trillion euros in money on implementing human rights standards and environmental standards in their due diligence processes. And we just started, which is related to, I mean, ERC is my passion. So I've been able to get them started on a biodiversity initiative where they are going to engage with the large food processing companies and supermarket chains on regenerative agriculture as a source instead of the kind of destructive forms they're currently sourcing, which I think is an important step forward. So that's what I'm doing in relation to what the ERA, the Ecosystem Restoration Alliance, is doing. What we're looking, well, in total, honestly, we first got pulled in by John Liu and Andrew Langford, who is also part of this thing because there was money. But it is extremely interesting to be part of a larger conversation about building a global alliance. There are more alliances being created. One is being created right now by the United Nations as part of the UN Decade. There is existing alliances such as the Regeneration International or the Society for Ecological Restoration. All of those we're part of, but those are very much knowledge-seeking activities. And we're trying to find how we can link the local projects. I say small, but in all the projects are aiming to restore 3 million hectares, which is quite a bit. But so far, only 7,000 have been started on. So we still have a long ways to go. And that means we need to broaden our perspectives, see if we can involve more people and move forward. Our own goal is not the hectares, it's actually people. We're aiming to transform as many people as possible to become citizens of an ecological world. And if we can't become that, we will really not survive as a species.
I like
That's
that
my
phrase.
personal yeah.
I like the phrase "citizens of the ecological world." So thank you. It's great to have you, and great to have a little bit of insight into the channels that you are exploring with us and on our behalf. Continuing to introduce new members, I believe that's Valerie Clark on her iPhone.
Hi there. Yeah, actually Valerie Gordon, but good enough.
I beg your pardon.
That's okay. My mother's and my names are very complicated. So I'm Valerie Gordon and she's Valere Clark. So, you know, and then our organization's name is even more complicated, Cuenca Los Ojos, which is not only a little bit odd, but also grammatically incorrect. So we are kind of a jumble of words. Cuenca Los Ojos represents a restoration effort that my mother started in northern Mexico about 30 plus years ago. She actually started in southern Arizona on some land that had been degraded significantly. And with no professional training or no particular support other than just her own gumption, you know, my mother started doing some soil erosion you know, small work on the ranch that I grew up in Arizona. And she then, and this was, you know, kind of an ancient technique that had been used, has been used all over the world, even, by many members of this group, but was sort of reapplied in a new way over a larger landscape. And saw some pretty significant results. And that kind of grew into a much bigger thing, moved into Mexico and started rehabilitating land in Mexico. And my mother's theme is, to restore broken systems, and then nature will sort of, if you can jumpstart it, then nature will fix itself. And one of the things that I think CLO has done pretty well was to, she, bought, what for private citizens at that point seemed like a lot of land. Now recognizing global wealth, it's a, postage stamp, but then applying dedicated and consistent restoration techniques and persevering even through challenges, when things washed out, when fires came, and we could see the test of time over decades, the change of the landscape. And that was really pretty exciting. And pretty soon a variety of groups started to take note. So along the theme of, like, if you restore a broken system, nature will take care of itself, we could see the biodiversity returning. So grasses returning, obviously the water was returning. So what had been ephemeral streams now were flowing year round. Some native fish that had, all but vanished from this landscape had, now returned. And the whole, food chain system, ecosystems that evolved from there. So it was really pretty exciting. Scientists took note and started studying this. And I think, my mother is now in her 80s, and although she has more energy than most 20-year-olds, is now looking for have we done enough, and how do we make sure that this continues in the future? And so part of my goal with her work is to find a way to get it permanently protected. And so we worked on that in Mexico. And so that was, because doing land restoration on land that could be, sold and converted was not going to be a great outcome. So we worked on that. And then in addition, my mother is super eager to, I would even say anxious, to get the word out. And, if she could, she'd get everyone building little trincheras, these little loose rock structures that retain soil. And I think one of her interests in joining ERA, I talked with her about this the other day. She said, well, they can help us get the word out about building gabions. And so I say that kind of jokingly because it just speaks to the passion with which, she lives her life. I think it also speaks to the fact that grassroots organizations who are really focused on doing direct impact on the land don't necessarily have the tools to do the outreach, to do the bigger work, to get the message out, to show that this kind of land restoration technique is going to become, in our opinion, is going to become significantly more relevant in landscapes where they never thought there would be significant erosion. As grasslands become more arid, as you have, as you have forests that burn, and now you've got erosion issues. There is a whole new, I wouldn't even venture to guess how many millions of acres are going to be converted into a new land type that could either, steeply degrade even further, or some of that could be stopped with some of these intervention techniques that are natural. They're completely nature-based, man-powered by and large, and have significant lasting impacts. So that's where CLO is. And we have this preserve in northern Mexico, and we are my mother's been working at this for a few decades, but we have just now become permanently protected over the last few years. We're working on establishing an endowment and doing outreach and connecting with groups that we think are going to have meaningful, lasting impact like this one. So thank you for letting me participate. I actually have a small ranch of my own, so I'm going to need to get out and do some of my chores this morning, but I wanted to see a few faces and say hello and hear what this was about. So I appreciate this organization's interest in CLO, and I'm excited about the potential for collaboration in the future.
Valerie, I just want to say this is Adam from Biodiversity for a Livable Climate.
Yeah.
And I've been aware of CLO for several years, and we actually feature one of your restorations on our homepage. And if I can share my screen for just a few seconds, I can show you.
You know, I thank you. I actually saw it when Cole sent me a few links to get to know this group. I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh. And, you know, our photos are so terrible. That's such an ugly photo, but it does tell, like ugly as in not well done, but it just shows we're kind of scrappy. It is really significant. So I think if you show that, you'll see that you take a, you know, huge undercut. I don't know, that section may have like 20 feet of streamside in cutting, and then it gets restored to a jungle, which actually, let me just share one more thing. So
just 1 second, John,
yeah.
can you allow me to share my screen?
I'm trying.
Okay,
Cole should
I'm
be
sorry,
trying
Valerie,
also.
go ahead.
No. I just, so, you know, I guess it was worth noting that the CLO lands are on the US-Mexico borderlands. So CLO is entirely in Mexico. But we are, you know, friends and acquaintances with the neighbors to the north. With some we have great relations, others we have, you know, coolish relations. But the wall has been a massive impact. And I can tell you that when I was a kid, yeah, thank you for, there we go. When I was a kid, yeah, you can see, there we go. I'm just looking at this on my screen, but yeah, this, so that picture with the water in it probably would have been after a monsoon. That would be dry most of the year, but then after a monsoon, the water would kind of scour things away. And you can't really see, at least I can on my screen, you know, some large rock structures. And in this one, this one has a big gabion. So it's a wire cage with rocks in it that allows the water to flow through, but the debris and the soil to be retained behind it. And then that silts up behind, allowing the silt to remain and then water to infiltrate, seeds, you know, get established, and the whole cycle gets working again. But this one, I don't remember the name of that specific draw. That might be Black Draw. Those were basically the roads. So much of that country is hilly and there aren't roads, and those were the transfer points for people who were transferring drugs or people smuggling and things like that. So I remember as a kid, we would drive up and down the washes. That's how we got from one ranch to the other. And that was the highway. And illegal activity happened in these highways as well. And ironically, when we built the gabions and the restoration happened, then, you know, that was a huge deterrent because literally, you know, physically, people could not access those points anymore. Of course, when the government came in to build the wall, they ripped all of this green wall out to put in a metal wall, which now is, you know, of course, a problem. And when the water comes, they have to open sections of it, which reintroduces a whole portal for, you know, people again. So the cycle has been kind of crazy. And, you know, we had the solution and, you know, it's going to be a long time to restore that. But thank you for showing that. And I appreciate you knowing about CLO and you sharing that on your site. It's exciting. Thank you.
And Valerie, we have a couple of media outlets where we can maybe do an interview with you and or your mother. So let's be in touch.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Valerie. One last new person introduction from the other side of the world, Lenelio, if you're with us. Lenelio is a tribal leader in the Philippines involved in and effort. And here he is. Would you say a little bit, say hello, Lenelio? And I saw that you did put a link to your website, which is quite informative. But let us hear your voice and say hello.
Yeah. Hello, good evening. It's a late evening here. It's almost the good evening to all from Philippines. By the way, I am Dato Lenelio Sangkuan. Dato is my tribal position here. I'm the founder of Tribes and Nature's Defenders. Our goal is to defend the natures and the culture, the nature's connectivity. We have programs to protect the 100,000 hectares intact rainforest and to restore the denuded mountains, the sacred mountains. So we are using the indigenous knowledge system and practices in restoring the nature. And we have programs like sustainable livelihoods in order for tribes to come back and do not involve in mining and logging here. So that's a program that we have now. And it's a very short introduction for us here. We are here in Mindanao, the largest island in the Philippines. So thank you so much for all.
Thank you, Lenelio. It's a pleasure to have you here. Okay, so we have a number of outstanding topics, and I think Maya Dutta is next. One of the things that we've been thinking about is sort of inventorying and trying to see which of the barriers to eco-restoration. Is Maya still with us here?
I am, yes. Sorry,
Yes,
I'm
okay.
off video for internet preservation.
That's all right. But if you're prepared, Maya has been taking the Ecosystem Restoration Camp course, which gets rave reviews, Peter, and from Maya and Nancy both, and has sort of begun pulling together a list of barriers to eco-restoration in hopes that we may eventually figure out how to dissolve some of those barriers. So Maya, the floor is yours for a few minutes if you're prepared to take it.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. My internet is a little weak. I'm currently in Delhi for some family issues. So I'm going to keep my video off and ask that if you want to share, I just have kind of a notes document that I'm working off of. So if anyone wants to see it on screen, I'll ask somebody else to screen share because I don't think I have the capacity. But basically, the idea, as John said, this is kind of drawn from my experience and from the wealth of experience that I've had the privilege to share in through ERC's Ecosystem Restoration Design course, thinking about the challenges to scaling regeneration. So, I mean, we're all here with some sort of understanding or another about ecosystem restoration and why it's worth doing, often because we have seen firsthand or through lectures and education, the remarkable success that regenerative operations can have. And, you know, you may notice this is really site by site, kind of project by project, local, communal, perhaps municipal, or even regional. There isn't a kind of so the many benefits have been proven time again in places. They will support a functioning water cycle, nutrients, energy, carbon sources into carbon sink, kind of bring against.
Maya, Is anybody else having difficulty hearing her? I'm getting only every third
and
word.
really protecting communities.
Yeah, Maya,
Yeah, she's not coming through.
Oh, no. I can try and move and hope that that sorts out, but I don't have tremendous confidence. I'm sorry about that.
well, it's better right now. Let's give it one more try and I will chat you if we decide that we need to pull the
Okay.
plug.
Okay, apologies for that. So me is things are
Sorry, Maya.
or worse.
Could we?
Maya,
could
we should just postpone this until next week.
Right.
But thank you very much for your efforts. And this document is it's well worth looking at and commenting on. I suspect that many of us can add to it. And that will set the stage for next week's discussion with Maya or whenever she's back and well connected with us.
I do want to add that this was one outline I did read and has very, very interesting insights. So when we do get Maya back, it would be great to dig back into those. But yeah, the document is also a great summary of broad and deep points.
Okay, good. So we'll come back to that. Noemi also produced a white pager, a one pager for us, and was just going to review the state of this initiative / exploration. And so I give the floor to her.
Yeah, very nice to see you, all of you, and Michael for the first time after many years. Yeah, you have to know that Michael was invited by me several years ago to do a course on water resilience in Poland, and we had the privilege to make a pond, which actually you don't know, Michael, but filled up in 2 months fully. So it was absolute success, and the whole landscape was really different just in a few months. We made some illegal dams, and they were absolutely powerful too. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
that.
it is function. Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah. So yeah, the idea of, I think for this proposal or the next few minutes is for me to present you with a brief, which I already wrote and shared with the group on carbon offsetting and why I believe the Alliance shouldn't go for that path to accept money from companies who just want to offset their emissions. You have to know that, well, this is not my, I'm not connected with this issue that much as I have different backgrounds, but I'm also coordinating a scientific group on greenwashing. It's a very interdisciplinary group based in the US at Brown University called Spinning Climate Change. And it's made of sociologists, PR experts, climate scientists, and policy and environmental policymakers as well, who are very conscious of the problems on green claims that most of you must be aware as well, how much of that is on the media by different actors, governments, corporations, banks. There's just so much of greenwashing going on. And so the group was tasked to kind of make an assessment of whether it's possible to build up a criteria framework. And we are publishing this at the moment. And this year we are focusing on net zero claims, as there's a lot of greenwash in that sphere as well. And this is why I got basically inspired to do a little brief for this group when I've heard about that it's still deciding where to accept funding from. And as a little intro, as you know, restoration is coming up much more in the policy, at least in Europe. There's much more money that is going to be channeled into restoring the agriculture practices, changing agriculture practices into restoration. So not just of subsidies will be directed this angle, but also there's more private people interested in giving donations, like rich people, also foundations. I looked into the Bosch Foundation and Oak Foundation. Both of them are now giving money for restoration. And also there's a growing list of companies who are wanting to contribute as to mitigate climate change, basically just to give money for restoration and changing agriculture practices, for instance, regenerative agriculture. So and then there's also companies who want to offer money, but in exchange for basically for carbon credits, using the whole carbon credit scheme. Yeah, as you know, offsetting means that one entity keeps emitting carbon while another one reduces their emissions or sequesters CO2, theoretically by an equivalent amount. But because one entity continues emitting, at best, there are no overall emission reductions from an offset. And in this paper, which Cole, if you would be so kind to share now, and the group, again, I'm saying that offsetting is a myth, itself is a myth, and it was an open letter. It was said by a group of about 40 scientists in an open letter last year, and they go argument by argument why offsetting is a myth. And unfortunately, we are seeing that it's also a greenwashing tool, and many environmental and social NGOs and indigenous communities have stood up against it, as we cannot compensate for ongoing emissions using nature-based solutions. So what I was proposing, and there's a proposition not coming from me, but from different NGOs, that there's an alternative path, and that's climate contributions. So as I mentioned, there are already companies who are willing to offer money as contribution, not as compensation for their emissions. For instance, Maersk will invest in nature-based solutions to remove around 5 million tons of CO2 per year by 2030 without claiming neutralization of their own emissions. And Walmart also committed to protect and restore 50 million acres of land by 2030, again, without neutralization. There are a list of other smaller companies who are also willing to put money into restoration or defending existing old growth forests, or a lot into regenerative agriculture without this whole offset game. So basically the main point of this paper that I shared is that I believe it's a unique moment and an opportunity for this alliance to stand up and claim that we are not going to accept money from those who just want to use it as a greenwashing tool, but just we will, and that's also to basically to create a picture of our independence and integrity, I think. And nobody has done that so far in the restoration movement. I looked into a lot of restoration groups and people who are into regenerative agriculture, and much of the money is coming through offsetting. So I think this is also a unique moment that ERA could just hope onto. Yeah, I think you have the document, so it's much more detailed if you're interested to look into the arguments. And I'm very happy to, any of your thoughts and questions.
Noemi, thank you very much for the presentation and for the paper. I've sent you an edit request. I suggest that you make it open for comments or edits, but I think comments is a great way to do it so that we can all mark it up and add our thoughts. I see that Adam and Peter have their hands up, so the floor recognizes Adam.
I'm just curious, Noemi, do you differentiate at all between carbon offsets and carbon credits? It seems, I don't understand the whole thing very well at all, but it seems to me that credits don't necessarily have the offsetting component in them.
As far as understanding, the offset is the mechanism, and credits is it's part of it. Credits are used for equivalencing 1 ton of CO2 emissions with 1 ton of, for instance, carbon that will be sequestered. So for me, it is part and parcel of the same mechanism.
Okay, thanks.
Peter.
I think it's a very well-written paper, by the way, and it really touches on the basic problem we're facing in ecosystem restoration, which is to focus here too on carbon and the translation to something a little more greener, trees. We've so far found only one tree planting scheme that we can work with, which is Plant for the Planet, because they allow for tree prices that are reasonable for ecosystem restoration projects. Most of them want 10, 20 cents per tree, which is ridiculous. All you can do is throw seeds at the ground and hope a tree pops up. And then after a year, they'll all be dead anyway. So, and that's a problem. And our policy now is to scream when someone offers trees and to run away. But we do need an alternative, because trees are really good to communicate. And carbon is also extremely simple, and it's easy to determine. You could count them literally. And restoration is in its complexity really difficult to communicate. Square meters, what happens in the square meter, how accountable can you be, what happens in that square meter? There's all kinds of issues around getting that flow of easy to communicate money into actual ecosystem restoration that we are trying to grapple with also. Because what I do know is companies choose the tree because it communicates so nicely internally. It makes their staff quite happy. And how nice would it be if we can get something that replaces the simple tree with something much more complex that can get the same reaction and the same employee loyalty to their employer, and hence the interest in investing in it or putting money into it, which is different from investing. We're not expecting a revenue to be created, which also does not happen with trees, other than paying off for your carbon emissions. I guess that's revenue. So I completely agree, and we're really searching for an alternative. We're starting a process in the next few months with a few people from the crypto world and the blockchain world, but also some old bankers, people that retired from banking. There's the conscience all of a sudden to think us through how we can get finance linked to ecosystem restoration. Even though I chair this pension fund initiative, getting them into ecosystem restoration, I have no idea. So we need to figure out a route, and carbon isn't the one, because it's one aspect of what we're trying to do. Trees isn't the one. For those of you in the US, one of our camps is starting the restoration of the hills around the Hollywood sign. The tree planting organization thought there would be great publicity in it until they figured out it only needed 3,000 trees, but has a cost of $300,000. That's not doable to a tree planting organization. So that relationship did not happen. And that's actually, it happens all the time. In South Africa, Green Pop is a tree planting organization. They can't do it for what tree planting schemes are willing to pay. It's a problem that's blocking us right now from success, because a lot of money goes there to trees and carbon, and it should be going to the more holistic approach. So maybe an invitation for those interested to join in our process.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. I'd like to know a lot more about the process. And I think this group would like to know more about the process. So please keep us posted. I have a few small points. One is I'm next, then Philip, then Adam, then Paula. I do think it's useful to distinguish between credits, which I take to be the certification of carbon drawdown, versus offsets, which is the use of those validated carbon drawdowns to license pollution, if you will. I wouldn't be surprised if carbon contributions, to use Noemi's phrase, were validated by some kind of a carbon accreditation process. Whether that's the way these terms are used right now, I don't know, but I did want to make that distinction. I also wanted to say that in a discussion yesterday, where people were talking about the rights of rivers and land, I realized that, you know, we have two frameworks in the West. One is the ownership model and the other is the right model. And someone pointed out to me recently that if you don't have rights, you can be owned. But that those are two frameworks that we can think about as ways of bolstering the perceived value of carbon and restoration and water and other things that we hold dear. One is to say this is worth a lot of money, and the other is to say these things are intrinsically valuable and they have rights which can be defended in court. So I think exploring these frameworks is a very interesting and productive channel right now. And I think this document, Noemi, which if you will make commentable, will be a good foundation for continuing the discussion. Philip?
So I'm going to remind people of what you already know. Most of the world, still 98% of the conversations are about limiting emissions. We are trying to promote restoration, sequestration through regenerative methods. And yet even that, you know, we're operating on a, you know, multi-decades time frame. I would like to remind us that our primary focus is cooling, and we need to kind of add these components into these kinds of discussions about offsetting. We need to give people credit for actually doing stuff that's going to cool the surface of the earth.
Adam?
With respect to forests, I just want to point out that Bio4Climate has built the first Miyawaki forest in the Northeast, and the Miyawaki forests are small pocket forests, and we planted 1,400 trees and shrubs, and the total cost of those was under $10,000. It was several $1,000s more to get the project together and have the city prepare the land and all of that. But the forests after 3 years become self-sustaining and need no further care. And they're biodiverse and native species and have all kinds of benefits for cooling, et cetera, and so forth. And we hope to help build Miyawaki forests in the Northeast and support that whole movement. That's it.
Thank you. Paula?
You're on mute, Paula.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Good. So I was also going to mention the Miyawaki forests, but I first had a question because Peter, and thank you all for this discussion, Noemi, Peter, and others who have joined in. Was it Trees for the Planet? Could you repeat again? Was Trees for the Planet the one positive example of enough money being invested?
Plant for the Planet. It's set up by Felix Linkbinder. He's one of the youth who started with Greta to protest.
Right.
As this scheme, and it allows the project to determine the price of a tree. It's a crowdfunding platform, so the amounts are lower. But if you're doing an agroforestry project, a tree costs 90 euros and not 10 cents. If you're doing a good tree planting scheme, the tree starts at 140. What Adam just said for the Milwaukee Forest, 10,000 for 1,400 trees. That sounds like a reasonable price per tree. The tree schemes want to pay $140 for 1,400 trees and not 10,000. So that's not a reasonable price.
Right.
Anyway, that's the problem. Yeah.
Thanks. The trees actually cost $10 a tree pretty much in this particular project. And of
Yeah.
course, taking care of it was something that the city agreed to do. So we're thinking that municipalities that are willing to back things may be a very good way to go in terms of getting a rapid increase in the number of forests. So I don't know whether
Yeah.
that
But-
in any, I'm sorry, go ahead, Peter.
But that means externalization of costs. So the offset is accounted for in one organization, and the work and the money is paid by another. So it's another example of externalization of actual costs when it comes to the environment, and that's a continuing problem. And we need something that incorporates them. So if the tree price is $10 a tree, which I think is $5 is actually reasonable, I
Yeah.
can work with it because we can take care of a tree for $5 for a couple of years. But we can't do it for 10 cents or 20 cents or 40 cents, which is the maximum sometimes.
Right.
Quote,
Yeah.
it's impossible.
Our forest maker said that the $10 that we had to pay on the East Coast was more than twice as high as what they were doing on the West Coast in Oregon and state of Washington. So, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Noemi, look what you've unleashed.
Yes, I just wanted to share the importance of tree nurseries because I did some planting as well. And we actually got donated all the trees because we applied as kids, as schools. And we had a project of, I think, $4,000 for 1,000 tree, planting with the community on a Saturday. But also because of several factors, tree nurseries often don't have the trees you would like to have, which are climate resilient, which are diverse, which are good quality. And second, they may not have in the amount that you want for your restoration job. So we realized that as part of the Kids for Forest project that I started, that tree nursery is where we have to start from, and collecting the seeds is where every kid has to start from. So we are organizing this whole event, not by getting the trees from tree nurseries, but actually establishing tree nurseries in schools and getting the seeds collected by kids. And, they can grow out hundreds and thousands of them. And then it doesn't cost anything. And they get involved for the whole cycle, from the seed growing and to the transplanting to the tree nursery, and then transplanting to the actual site, which could be then done with the municipality. And if such an approach is multiplied, scaled up, then we don't really need those tree nurseries which are selling these trees so expensive.
And we did realize very quickly, because we had requests from other towns once we had done our nursery, and even before we finished our forest, we realized that we had to stimulate the development of nurseries. And one of the local native plant gardeners who donated some trees asked, what can we start now that you can use in a couple of years? But that is a whole area that needs to be stimulated along with any kind of foresting. Yeah.
Annika.
Yeah, I just wanted to surface up some comments on the chat. I think Lanelio shared basically some of the tendencies to buy up the land in rainforests, and it just, as the money starts pouring in, it's even imaginable that in order to earn carbon credits, or in order to basically get into the market of it, there would be a tendency to buy up kind of natural land. There is a model called payment for eco-restoration services, where you essentially pay the local community to stay and live on the land and manage and keep the land in its intact state, because mature trees are much more effective at drawing down, like several times more effective at drawing down carbon. And it's just that being one metric we care about, but most importantly, it's an existing healthy ecosystem. So I'm curious if from our member base, we have any kind of practicing entities in like the payment, the paying for eco restoration services model that can maybe be connected to kind of Lanelio's area to kind of help with solving, instead of giving locals the money to buy up their land, giving locals the money to preserve the land. I think the primary issues are around food security. And Lanelio, please feel free to jump in. I think I'm trying to share. It's so some of his notes are on the chat, but yeah, for the group, it's really a question directed around like payment for ecosystem services. If we know any, I think it'd be curious to get that. The protection layer is, I know we're about restoration, but yeah, it might be good to bring that into the fold.
I think that's a great model to think about, and as a way of attaching the value and the payment to what's needed to do it the right way, to do it persistently, and to do it justly. Cole?
Just to quickly add, Anika, I think you asked the question, do we have anybody already working on this that we're aware of? Personally, I don't know anybody. John, do you?
No.
All right. So just to add on to that, that's something I'll start looking into immediately. And then one thing that I wanted to go back to is the idea of having people, especially like groups of schools and things like that, growing trees that can then be donated for these foresting projects. Something that I've been working on is converting my backyard into a sustainable micro ecosystem. And I live on a rental property. And one issue I have is that I can't use something like agroforestry, but that doesn't mean that I can't try to grow seedlings that I can then donate somewhere else. And so doing a model like that, where you're kind of doing short-term agroforestry and then getting the seedlings to other places, is something that we could implement and could easily be spread to neighborhoods and small local communities.
That's very interesting. That could even happen in one's basement.
Right.
That's really interesting. Nancy?
Yeah, I would just like to mention that in several of the modules from ecosystem restoration camps, there's the development of nurseries in order to supply materials for their projects. So, and I've seen this over and over again. And of course, if you're doing that nursery work yourself, the cost is a whole lot lower.
Thank you. Philip, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so payment for ecosystem services is a huge area with lots of actors in it. I posted one link that the World Wildlife Fund has been involved with. And then locally in my own town, we are trying to experiment with an example where neighbors are working together and trying to get payment for addressing stormwater issues, so that the people at the top of the hill who are the source of the problem can assist the people at the bottom of the hill who are experiencing the problem. And I can share a paper later. Right now, it seems to be, I'm having permissions issues with providing the link, but once I solve those, I can share that as kind of a small scale example of payment. We call it environmental services, but.
Thank you. So my hand is up virtually, and I just wanted to share one other point, which is, as Philip points out, it's not fundamentally about carbon. Arguably, it's fundamentally about cooling. In truth, I think there is this there's this polyhedron. There are these multiple points of interaction which make for a healthy system. Each of these could be things for which there should be credits. Each of these could be things for which rights should be applied, rights should be recognized, or conceivably there are things that could be paid as services. But I just want to point out that on the one hand, if it's only carbon, we're losing the game. And it may be that there are several different frameworks that we can use to try to reinforce the interconnectedness of these things and perhaps the recognition of their value or their importance. Any other comments on this? Noemi, if you open it for comments in the document, I suspect that we will all read it because, as Peter says, it's well written and it's got lots of good information. If we add our comments to it, I'm guessing that further grist for conversation and progress will emerge within a few weeks. Thanks a lot. That was really very helpful. Next item on the agenda. Cole and I have a few updates on what we are doing in the background that are not fully cooked. But Peter, you had a concrete proposal about the email list, and this would be a good time for you to put it forward.
Well, no, I had a complaint, which could be turned into a proposal. I noticed it's been very busy, so I decided to check up on the Restoration Alliance prior to this meeting, and then I saw the number of mails that I have moved to a separate mailbox so they don't clutter my inbox, and that was way over 400. And then finding the ones that are relevant was a bit difficult because there's a lot of great exchange going on. So I'm wondering if we could do another marker somewhere that I could then filter out from that box and put it in a subsequent box of organizationally related mails, such as on strategy for the organization, governance issues, joint funding proposals, whatever we're doing. And I'm not trying to say that I'm a really busy person, because I can manage stuff, but I realize it's very difficult to discern the stuff I really should pay attention to the stuff that I can read later.
Right. Yeah, I could say that there are several possible mechanisms for that. And if you simply want to reduce the flow, as you know, you can go to the groups.google.com/Eco-Restoration Alliance, go to the website for the mailing list and adjust your settings. That gives you the ability to choose a daily digest or one message, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a full solution, but it is something I want everyone to remember that they can tune. A second solution that we have begun to recognize is hashtags. So we have used #CCC for the carbon credits concern discussion, and we can introduce a few more hashtags which can be used to flag discussions relevant to a particular topic. And then you could use your own email to filter by those hashtags. And that's a way of doing it within this. Another solution that is available would be, of course, to set up separate lists. And yet another solution, for some for information sharing, some for policy issues and so on. But in my experience, then you've got to sort of look in lots of different places, and it gets, now you've got 4 problems, not 1 problem. And finally, it could be that we should be going to a threaded forum in which you can actually simply indicate the particular discussion threads that you want to be alerted to, so that you can tune it that way. That's my enumeration of mechanisms available in our world today. I'd welcome requests and suggestions. Philip.
If you use Gmail, there are powerful filter tools. For example, you can create labels, and those labels can have sub-labels, and then you can use a global tag like from the ERA mailing list and attach a label so that it shows up as a colored item at the beginning of the subject. And then if you want to do further, you can sub-filter, create additional filters to put like anything with the # CCC into a subfolder in that list. And then that makes it very easy for you to go to your your folders in Gmail and track whichever conversation is of interest to you.
Point taken. One can do a fair amount of tinkering internally if one is willing to do a fair amount of tinkering internally. Peter.
How about using a different channel for the non-governance related, or use a different channel or system altogether, such as maybe Slack or Discord, horrible name, or well, actually Slack is a horrible name too, Basecamp, whatever exists where you can go to and then look at the channel you want to read up on prior to a meeting, and then at a later time check the rest.
Right. So that was what I meant by the threaded forum kind of a explanation. I should say that there is one other I want to add to my enumeration here, which is that we are looking for a true collaboration platform to allow for discussions as well as working together on various documents and things instead of the current hodgepodge of Google documents, et cetera, et cetera. There is a meeting tomorrow that Annika and Cole and I and Ananda and a few others will be involved with to explore two different collaboration platforms, which are likely to be our longer term solution to this. Just to alert to them to the notion that the Global Water Regeneration Alliance, if I'm remembering its name carefully, is working with a platform developer called Open Impact to create that kind of a collaboration space. The Global Rewilding Alliance, which is another group rather like ours, is working with Explorer.land, and we, the Eco Restoration Alliance, developed a tentative relationship with Just One Giant Lab, which is another collaboration platform. And so I'm bringing all of those people to the table tomorrow just to compare these platforms and to try to persuade them that that the real challenge is allowing these platforms to intercommunicate in such a way that we can have, if you will, branch offices in lots of places while maintaining our own set of tools. But it's something of a mess. So that's the point of that meeting, and that's to say that there are longer term as well as shorter term solutions for us to explore. Cole?
Just to kind of build off of our updates and also get into what Philip brought up with, sorting out your Gmail and kind of finding your own methods for organizing it. I've kind of described myself to Judy the other day as being the mechanic for everything that's going on here. And so I just wanted to update people and say that I am working to set up one-on-one meetings with people, just one, to get to know you guys better, but also to go through and help people with getting a system set up that works best for them, figuring out the settings in our Google groups, and things of that nature. So if you would like to have that done sooner rather than later, feel free to email me directly and I can work that out with you. Or just sit tight and I will be messaging you directly in the future. Along that same idea, we did start setting up other Google groups for specific topics like governance, like finance. Let me reference my list here. And we had one going for things like the XPRIZE working group. So I don't know if we wanted to continue with that system as a short-term solution. That might work out for people like Peter who are having too many emails come in. You can just set, your general Eco Restoration Alliance emails to be abridged or shortened, so you're just getting the digested amount. And then you can also be subscribed to the important things that you want to be subscribed to.
Yet another variation. Adam?
I have a comment, which it's an observation which may or may not be helpful, probably not. But to put it in ecological terms, overshoot is overshoot. And when you've exceeded carrying capacity, you go into overshoot. And when you go too deeply into overshoot, you go into collapse. I don't think we're anywhere near that. But what we're seeing is a symptom of overshoot. We are asking too much from a system, from a creature, human beings, that were never designed to work, designed by nature, to work in large groups. And 95% of our time here has been in small groups and tribes. And that's what we are designed to be able to do. And when we get into larger situations, I've seen this happen over and over and over again, and with people trying to find the right tool and then needing another one and another one. And
Well, that's a diagnosis, but there's no alternative, right, to trying to improve your situation as you reach capacity.
Well, yes, and that's, you know, what we're facing in the biosphere. And this is kind of another aspect of the biosphere. And I think the solution to our problem may relate to the solutions in the biosphere, but we don't know what those are yet, except to go small, which we're not even big. So I'm just stating the problem and maybe resetting expectations. Do we go round and round and round to try to solve this problem? Or do we just kind of adapt and live with it?
Annika.
There are tools that have solved the problem at a large scale. The combination is it's not just a tool usually. It's usually like a standard, like, okay, how are we going to structure? It's a combination of structure and tool, essentially, that can help ensure that kind of we move forward as a collective. With this specific challenge, again, I don't know, how much time we want to spend with problem solving, like so but Slack and Discord are both kind of more common tools, but I think at least Slack is paid beyond a certain number of messages, but Discord potentially is something that we can look into. And Discord is a little different. Like, these tools are a bit of a mess because it's really more of internal, quote unquote, internal collaboration, whereas some of the tools that we're looking at, let's say tomorrow, is like externally presenting member profiles and externally sharing kind of what these profiles are, and also kind of allowing them to connect. But then the deep conversation that can happen online, once a connection is made, you kind of there are different tools and channels for that. So for right now, to address Peter's point of too many emails and identifying the right emails, and if let's just solve the problem for governance specific or any kind of internal organizational, or we are figuring out how to work together. For anything of that sort, maybe we can use just hashtag internal governance, and that seems to be kind of the topic. And go on the subject line. I'll try to do that moving forward. And hopefully, Peter, that solves your specific concern at this time. And then there is a general structure piece that has to be solved, I think, in a different form.
Anika, I'm sorry, just directly to respond. I think what you said at the beginning is right on target, that it's a matter of internal standards. And it's not a technological problem, even though it looks like one. It's an interrelationship problem. So if we look at it from that perspective, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And when you and Christina and Judy start doing the collaborative work, we may discover that there are good ways of doing this.
Both Cole, and then me, and then Philip have our hands up.
So much of what I was actually going to say was already brought up by Anika. So I just want to second everything that she just said, and then jump back real quick to the whole different Google groups that we had set up. When we established them, we assigned different moderators to it, and that was one form of a structure that we were trying to put together. I don't know that this is the time or the place to go into the weeds about it, but there was that discussion before, and I'm trying to recall who was part of it, but we have talked about this.
Right. So this clearly is going to be a recurring conversation, but in the short term, without requiring that anyone else solve this problem, I think that Cole and I can try to impose a little bit of hashtag discipline, which will create some opportunities for us to sort these conversations. And so we can take that on as a short-term response to Peter's plea for help as we explore longer-term solutions as well. Philip?
I helped invent the internet. This has been a perennial problem since day one. Somewhere in the deep recesses of archive, there's something that I wrote, I think back in the late 70s about managing mailing lists. I'll note that any system, and I've tried quite a few from Slack to Basecamp and others, each one of those is a barrier to entry to people.
Yes.
The default of the world, for better or worse, is Gmail, Google Groups, Google Docs as the primary collaboration tools, and just about every group I'm involved with uses those tools. Anything else, and you start to exclude people.
And they do work pretty well. So let's see if we can add some value with hashtags and some internal conventions before we leap to a new platform, as we explore new platforms as well. Okay. Any last comments or dissents from this short-term incremental attempt at a solution? Okay. We've actually, I think, had a number of very good conversations, and we've stuck to the agenda. Cole, you're next on the agenda. You might just want to update people on your follow through on the social media initiative, if you will.
All righty. So let me actually start by saying that all of these meetings are recorded, as you may or may not be aware of, and they do get uploaded to our YouTube channel. It is unlisted, so nothing public is being spread out there, but everybody within our group has access to them. And so if you ever want to go back and reference these fruitful conversations, that's one way of doing so. And then in the description of each of those videos, there is links to all of the notes documents, agendas, etc. But in terms of other social medias, I have us set up on Twitter, Instagram. We now have a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group. And I did a little searching on some of them to try to find some of you. And there are a lot of people with similar names. So if you have any of these social medias, I urge you to either send them to me directly through email or find us on those platforms and join the groups, follow us on Twitter, and everything is followed back. The idea behind these social medias is to be able to promote everything that your different organizations and you as individuals are doing. And so much of what you post on Twitter or any of the other platforms, we can then broadcast out, and that'll just be another means of promoting each other and helping one another out. As I get more and more of these profile links and etc., I will also be compiling them into a spreadsheet document that everyone will have access to. And so if you meet someone new and you want to find them on their social medias, that'll just be a quick and easy way of doing so. Any questions or concerns on that? I can address them now.
So Cole is now sort of reverse engineering. He's seeking out all of your social media feeds and organizational feeds and so on. You can make life easier for him if you just point him to things that you think are relevant to this attempt to aggregate, enumerate, and cross-pollinate these various social media feeds, including, by the way, LinkedIn, which is one that may not be on your radar, Paul. Okie doke.
LinkedIn is, and we actually have the list already compiled for most people's LinkedIns, as well as the LinkedIn group now. So you can join that if you're on LinkedIn.
Okay. We have a few minutes left. Lenelio is still with us, and if and he's been putting some very interesting comments into the chat, including one about this notion of eco-restoration circles. So I just wanted to see if you wanted to call that point to our attention if he's still with us. Because I'm not exactly sure what he means, but I like the sound of it. And it reminds me of holacracy. Okay, but I guess he's not here. So not only are the YouTube videos, by the way, available, they have transcripts, which are not easy to find. But if you click on the ... on the YouTube page, you can find the full machine-generated transcript of the meeting. And then if you use the find command in your browser, you can actually search it for various phrases. And then when you click on that part of the transcript, it will jump to that portion of the YouTube video. And since these discussions are richer than one can absorb in real time or even capture in notes, it's just be aware that all of that is potentially available. You know, we have 13 minutes and we've had a number of really good conversations. I just want to open it up to see if there's any other gossip or topics or issues people would like to share for a few minutes. Yes, Russ.
Yeah.
Turn off your video, Russ.
Peter, I just sent you a request asking for your email address. Mikel is gone, but his group in Slovakia, they make money for people, or they make some money for their organization by working with some forest owners, and they do things in such a way that they increase the water supply for the area. And I think it might be valuable for you to talk with some people from his organization. You're talking about funding and tree planting and such, and this, I think they get a lot of trees planted ultimately because of anyway, it'd be good for you to talk to them, I think. So send me your email address if you would, please. And I had another note about something you said. Let me take a quick look, sorry. Oh yeah, a friend of mine in Africa, he's African Indian. He's actually a retired Swiss lawyer. His name's Roland Frutig. And he gets a lot of trees planted for not very much. So I'll connect you with him too. He's a member of the ERA. That's it. John, you're muted.
Thank you. I was just going to say that in addition to all of the links that Cole has just shared, within the intranet is a people page, which has profiles of most of our members, should have profiles of all of our members. So if you don't find yourself there, email Cole. And that often includes contact information like emails. Paula raised her hand, I think. Paula, who's struggling to get off of mute. There you go.
I was going to mention, I'm sorry because so many people have left now, but, and John, you may have mentioned it last week, that Biodiversity for a Livable Climate has a series on public television called Life Saves the Planet. And it's generally a monthly speaker series, usually 2 people, one presenting, one in conversation, but it could be more people. And I've signed the Eco Restoration Alliance up to speak at the end of March. And so all discussions about how we want to present the Alliance to the world for the first time. This is a very important discussion, and we need to get to a certain point anyway in that discussion before the 28th. So we haven't had a broad discussion of what the title might be, who might be good representative speakers to speak for the whole alliance, in addition to John, who will definitely be one of the presenters. But I'm not sure if you're looking like skeptical that you should do that, John, but
No,
Good.
I'm eager to do
Good.
it, and I'm eager to be joined by some other people.
right, exactly. So I'm not sure what process to follow going forward. We have plenty of experience working with other groups and people to figure out what's a good title for their presentation. That's certainly something I'd welcome suggestions for. How do we want to introduce ourselves? And GBH is it's a local public television station that has a national reach sometimes. But I think this is a great opportunity and welcome people's thoughts about how to develop this in the next week and a half, because GBH will start doing publicity after that. So,
Great. I'm sorry, I forgot. I wanted to put that on the agenda and I neglected to. So thanks for bringing it up. Charles, is this relevant to Paula's topic?
Yeah, I just want to ask Paula if she could repeat the name of the series again.
Life Saves the Planet.
Thank you.
And actually, I can put the link, or we can get the link to you. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this right now, or we can add it after to the chat. The link to the whole series so far, it's been going on for about a year and a half. Actually, I think Judith Schwartz was one of the first people in the series. She was presenting with Ben Goldfarb, another environmental journalist, about animals and their impact and potential in terms of restoring the planet. So,
I do want to say, I was very taken by Michal's phrase "water without borders," especially in the current context.
Yeah.
Secondly, as I did say last week, I'm actually comfortable with the right partners in describing the ERA without quite defining the ERA. So I'm not too worried, but we do need a title.
Yeah.
Third is, especially given the current climate, geopolitical climate, I thought that Anastasia might be a really interesting guest, not to talk about the geopolitical issues, but to show that we in fact are on the theme of eco-restoration without borders, despite current events. And so I'll put that out, and that's also a possible title, Eco-Restoration Without Borders. And those are my current thoughts on your topic.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have any first thoughts, knowing that this is going to be a bit of a process, but would certainly appreciate your process?
I think maybe in addition to like somebody representing like deep scientific knowledge, like an on the ground restorer, like maybe someone like Lanelio or any other indigenous group that's there. So we're kind of getting both of those perspectives a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Nice. Well, so this conversation will continue.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Paula, I think it would be, if you haven't already, posting into the mailing list, maybe with a hashtag TBD, would be a good way of opening discussion to those who aren't here right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
So we have a rich and detailed chat here. It gets appended to the agenda document, correct, Cole? Yep. And unless there's anything else, I just want to thank everybody for lots of, I think, very helpful conversations. And we'll meet again in slightly less than 7.0 days at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern.
Philip, real quick before you leave, you'd asked me what needs to be done to improve your entry. I'm not sure what you were referencing there.
On the people page.
Let me see. I think I have them set. I'm going to be doing some reformatting for the intranet, trying to make it look neater and then also provide more information on our members. Currently, I believe it only links to LinkedIn accounts or LinkedIn pages because that's what I've had so far. So as I find more social medias and as you send them to me, I can list those as well. So if you'd rather be listed, or just send me all your profiles and I'll get them posted up one way or another.
It just looks like it's harvested the LinkedIn, advertisement on my entry. It doesn't have my photo, so I don't know what needs to be done to fix that.
We'll do something. Okay. Everybody, thank you very much. The discussion continues in the larger group, in the group, the email list. It can continue through direct emails to anyone you want to have a side conversation with. We'll be hearing more from various people who've taken this all forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Posting it.
Bye.